Right now, roughly the IRS collects $5 trillion a year.
Late 1800s, early 1900s, we didn't have income taxes. We collected tariffs. And that was one of the greatest times for our country, like financially.
New leadership takes office, new administration comes in.
If you look at the numbers, it's going to add massive amounts to the deficit.
We're building massive businesses. We're obviously this country, largest transfers of wealth. Baby boomers just coming of age. If you buy a business, you have
Welcome back to the KB Podcast. I'm Kylie Brown, founder of Blue Onyx Development and KB Capstone Homes. Today, we're unpacking one of the most radical proposals in modern politics. President Trump's plan to abolish the IRS. Yes, you heard that right. Abolish it completely. This isn't just about tax cuts or reform. This is about rewriting how America funds its government, how businesses operate, and how everyday people like you could manage and keep more of your hard-earned money. So we'll break down what this could mean for small business owners, employees, and families alike, and how it could affect your paycheck, your savings, your business cash flow, and currently what smart people can start doing now to prepare, position, and profit from this. So we're going to dive right in. Just a few thoughts. In plain English, I guess we can jump in with Andrew or Daniel. What about abolishing the IRS would actually mean to the average person?
I can jump in on that. I know that everybody's going to have some thoughts on this, but I would say that Trump's really proposing something radical here to abolish the IRS and basically replace the income tax system with a national tax or tariffs on imports, right? So right now, roughly the IRS collects $5 trillion a year, which funds almost everything, right? That's coming from all kind of levels of tax brackets, right? Sales tax, federal tax, income tax, capital gains taxes, payroll taxes, kind of you name it, everything in between. That's paying for the military, Social Security, highways, Medicare, etc. So getting rid of the IRS it basically means no more audits, right? It's replacing the entire engine that we have currently going. And the idea is to make taxes pretty simple. So when you pay for things, in your everyday life, you're basically they're calling it the Fair Tax Act calls out for about a 23% national tax on all of the goods that you're paying for on a day-to-day basis, right? So you're basically collecting every single dollar up front. And then when you go out to the market, when you're buying a car, when you're buying shoes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that's going to be at a higher price point. But if you make, $100,000 a year, basically you're grossing $100,000 a year to your pocket, right? So I'll kind of stop there and let anybody else kind of jump in if they want to.
I think I first heard of that idea on the Joe Rogan podcast, actually. And it was just, and still to me, it just seems like an idea that he's floating. I'll just back up a little bit. Like I'm fairly right leaning. There are some things where I'm a little bit in the middle, but I think we can all agree that politicians like to float ideas to get a little bit of, see what the public has to say. But I think, like Andrew, you were saying, I mean, we collected what, 5 trillion and $5 trillion in income tax
it's projected to be 7 trillion actually in 25.
I think we've collected, ballpark 300 billion in tariffs since
Correct.
Trump has done that. But the cool thing is like it hasn't been very long that we've implemented these tariffs. Like, what has it been, like a year to year and a half, maybe something like that? So the cool thing is it's like, okay, we've collected roughly 300 billion. And I say this because the whole idea behind it is like, okay, back in the Gilded Age, late 1800s, early 1900s, we didn't have income taxes. We collected tariffs. And that was one of the greatest times for our country, like financially. But today, we have all of these government aid programs. Even back then, like there weren't any programs set up for veterans of foreign wars or, Social Security or like poor people, things like that. Like we didn't have any of those things set up. So there's a lot of like distinct differences between our country then and it is today. So I think it was kind of like, I didn't really take it seriously when Trump said that. It's like, oh, well, back in the Gilded Age, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea is that we're going to replace the IRS with tariffs. We've only collected 300 billion of the 5.2 trillion, soon to be 7 trillion of income taxes that the United States will carry.
Yeah, and to put just numbers around that, it's roughly 2.4% of the total number, right? So it's just so like to me that's the only potential problem. Like we're just getting going with it, but it represents such a small number that, it'd be one thing if it was 50% or, 30% or something like that, but it's not completely eliminating the entire national debt.
Well, I think his whole purpose was just to eliminate the IRS altogether, which I'm with you guys, but it's going from what is it, the IRS over to the ERS?
Yeah, it's a sales pitch. It's a straight sales pitch. And somebody like Trump would love to get rid of a third party that would audit, and that's maybe what the play is. Him get rid of the IRS, put in something that he's structured. Maybe that's easier. I mean, I don't think he ever did show his tax returns, right? If you want to get down to it, yeah. For me, it's a straight play. And if you look at the numbers, it's going to add massive amounts to the deficit. Tax isn't going anywhere, is it? They can call it whatever they like and repackage it and give it back to us. But I think if there's some positive changes in there that can help families keep more money in their pocket, like what you were saying, Andrew, it sounds good on paper, right? You make 100 grand, maybe you're paying tax when you're buying stuff and it's a lower amount. But if everything goes up, the cost.
I actually think it hurts the middle class a little bit, the lower and the middle class more, because, kind of what you're saying, like in theory, you have more money in your pocket, but, people are barely getting by as it is. So if all of your costs go up 20%.
You mean another policy that hurts the middle class and widens the gap between the wealthy and the rest of
it's just, it doesn't affect people that are making more money. That's all going to their pocket. They can stomach like the smaller costs of the everyday living, but they also benefit from the back end of making a lot more money, that therefore they can put a lot more into investments, etc. Only the top kind of tier of the tax bracket of people even really own tangible assets. That's how people get wealthy. So if they're not even paying capital gains taxes on the sale of a $10 million building, or you made $1 million in crypto and you sell that, now you're not paying any taxes on that. To me, it's just like a massive advantage for the people at the top.
Well, when he says removed all of taxes, though, that doesn't mean we're going to remove all taxes, because there's still, it'd be great if we could remove all income tax, where someone that's only bringing in $500 or $1,000 a week, they don't have to pay any income tax, but you still have to have taxes on for schools, roads, all the basic necessities of your day to day.
And I've read a lot of different contradicting things, right? Because kind of what you're outlining to me makes the most sense. Like, you can't spend enough on your typical goods to kind of like offset all the other stuff. To me, it also, it really incentivizes saving, because if you know that all of your money that's being spent is the money that's being taxed, then it's like, all right,
well, I would agree with you, but most time people, when they start making, let's say they make an extra $500 a week, they spend an extra $500 a week. That's why they never get to the level of wealth that those wealthy people are at. So if you make $1,000 a week, yeah, okay, now you saved, let's say $200, maybe $300. That needs to go to investments. You don't need to put that money into stuff that makes your temporary life better. You want it to make your future life a lot better. So that's how that works.
Yes, good point. Good point. So the big tax bill, then, that's kind of the topic we were going to dive into, right? There's a couple of things in there that I saw about, and number one, isn't it changed a lot of the previous tax code that was written, right? And that was basically, there was a period where it was expiring. So this thing's going to keep, at least stabilize things and map it out for people, so they kind of know what's happening for a period of time, where some of this stuff is, like I say, limited, or it was going to be expired. I think it was a 2017 bill that was passed, right? Any of you guys read about that?
Yeah. I know there was a couple things that, were temporary that are now permanent. I can't remember off the top of my head. They were small things. I think one of the small, Mickey Mouse factors would be, you can't comp meals that you pay for your employees anymore, something like that. I mean, there's a long list, but nothing really jumped out to me. I think, just kind of going back to Andrew, I think, or Gio, you mentioned that Trump never even showed his income taxes. I think the reason that a guy like that wouldn't want to show his income tax is because, you know, it it pretty much solidifies that only the top 1% of the 1% have access to the most creative tax strategies known to the nation. Because I mean, if you look at a W-2 employee and you compare it to someone who's making the same amount of money as a 1099, I mean, it is a night and day difference, like what their returns are going to look like, and also what you can deduct and what you can't deduct.
And correct me if I'm wrong. He's the only president in history that's ever not done it.
I don't know, but I think again, like, you know, he's definitely taking advantage of like the loopholes and things like that, and I'm not against it. Like, if that's the way it's written, then, you know,
Yeah,
why
sure.
would you
So if that's the case, you can show it, right? As long as if you're doing it, taking advantage of the code, there's nothing wrong. I don't think there's anything at all wrong with paying as least tax as possible and using everything that's written for you to your benefit. That's okay. That's there for everybody. The tax code's there for everyone, right? Obviously, different areas can, you know, benefit different people, but for sure, nothing wrong with that. So let's see. I mean, again, not we're on here this podcast about Trump and his tax returns, but you know, things can develop.
Well, based off of the number right now is $5 trillion that we owe. What is it, annual? Correct, Andrew? Is that what you stated? Yeah. So based off that, let's say he gets that down to where, you know, it's half. We're only coming up with 2.5 trillion every year, which I think is feasible. You know, might take 4 to 5 years to make that happen, maybe longer. What would you guys want to see in the taxes at that time? Would you want it to rather be a flat rate where it doesn't matter if you make 10,000 a year or, you know, 100 million a year, you're taxed at a flat rate, or a percentage?
Damn, I think it should depend on how much money you make. Like, I mean, if it doesn't sound
I'm more interested in what you can write off, to be fair. I don't really worry too much about the percentage. That, you know, is what it is. It's what can you write off. Like what you said in one of the previous ones, Carl. It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep in your own pocket, right? So that's really where the rubber meets the road for me. Obviously, less is better, you know. But again, it's what can you keep in your pocket, right?
Well, yeah, I know, but they wouldn't allow you to write it off the same way. So let's say you made $100,000 and everybody's taxed at 10%. You're paying $10,000. Doesn't matter what you write off. You still show that gross income of $100,000. If you're taxed on a percentage, I'm fine with that. It doesn't matter, you know, and I'm sure most of the wealthy are fine with that because they're not going to show $100,000. They're going to show that they made $10,000. And they're going to pay $1,000, or they're going to show they lost money.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That portion of it, right? That's what I'm talking about. That's the portion of it. It's what they show, what they actually put in. W-2 people, if all W-2 people shifted to 1099, they would be far better off, right? Just that simple little thing alone. It's a game changer, and it's so simple to do it.
Well, I think what Kylie's kind of alluding to, and I used to have like a really defined stance around this a few years ago, which has kind of slipped my brain, but like at a high level, if you did have like a stable fixed percentage that was across the board, it would also bring in a lot of like the corporations, a lot of these like super high end earners that are like wizards at basically, you know, depleting their income down to zero. There's a lot of these massive companies that hold their accounts offshore, they do business offshore, et cetera. A lot of those tax dollars aren't realized in the US because of the way that they've set themselves up, right? So, you know, I think that's a lot of what Trump's even trying to do by bringing like industry back to the US is to create more taxable dollars. Because if, you know, if the top 10 or really even the top 1% was taxed accordingly to what they were actually making, that would make a huge difference for the rest of the people, right? But, you know, guys are making, you know, I mean, even look at a guy like Elon Musk, who's taking a $1 salary a year. They do that on purpose because, you know, he's getting taxed at a dollar, right? And if he decides to sell shares, they rarely sell shares. I mean, they usually like leverage against their shares to then buy more stuff, and they're doing all, you know, they're being super tax efficient because they know what the game is, so they don't have to do it the way that everybody else does it, right? But if it was just like this fixed flat percentage, everybody, that's to me what's like infuriating about the tax system is, you know, it's this marginal tax rate, right? The first $10,000 is taxed at 10%, you know, 10% or whatever, and then, you know, you're up until 25, it's let's call it 12% or whatever the numbers are. And they increasingly get up and up and up. But that's what also makes it super confusing for people, because it's like, like I have to guess what this number is kind of at the end of the day. And if it's wrong, I'm going to jail. Right? Like, if everybody just knew it was a flat, 20%, I think that the corporations and some of these super high end earners would probably be okay with that. But
they're still going to get around it, because like what you just said with Elon Musk, perfect example. He's not going to go pay himself $100 million. He's going to borrow against his stocks, and it's a loan at that point, and the company's going to pay it back, and it's going to be write off.
Correct.
And if you die in debt, like, you never have to pay it. Look at
Depends
how
on
many
what kind of debt it is. Your kids might have.
Yeah, potentially. But like, couldn't they just, I mean, you could, sure. But I mean, it could still be floated and just kind of the can kicked down the road. I mean, look at how many hyper successful people, Trump included, have just filed for reorganization, like Chapter 11, Chapter 13, things like that. I mean, you can just, the debt just goes away. Nobody went to jail over it. I mean, if you evade taxes, you go to jail. But, like, I don't know. And I think there are case studies of this working. I mean, Dubai, if you just look at the United Arab Emirates, I mean, they're a classic example of someone where if you do own a business, and I'm not super seasoned on Dubai tax code, but the people who pay the majority of the taxes. Yeah. So it's like, if you own a business, you have to pay some sort of taxes, something like that. But they've basically, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So finish what you're saying, and I'll dive in with my 10 cents.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is, like, okay, Dubai is a class example of a country who's virtually eliminated income taxes, or the majority of income taxes for its people, but it makes up for it in, oil surplus and, other sectors that just contribute massive profits to that country. I mean, you could even say, arguably, that Dubai has become like the strongest financial center of the world just because of, how much money flows through there. It doesn't compare to us. Like, we don't have the oil that they have, or we just haven't dug it up yet. So I don't know. I think this whole thing is just going to be gradual, but I don't know. Gio, what were you going to say though? You're going to put in.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's an amazing place. It's one of my favorite places that I've lived over the years, and there's serious money there. And how it works, you've got onshore Dubai and offshore Dubai, right? So you don't pay any tax. Now, you can have these free zones and offshore zones, and you and I can open a company, a foreigner, and an onshore company in Dubai. You have to have an Emirati as a partner. And then you're basically paying them a fee for the year 15. Well, I'm not sure if it's a percentage or however they work it out. But so these individual Emiratis, their name goes on all these different companies that foreigners come on, and that's in essence a tax. So yeah, it's tax free for the most part, but they get you in many other ways, right? Fees, fines, all these different things.
Cost of alcohol.
Listen, yeah. Well, listen, the place where their police cars are Bugattis.
Yeah.
I mean, serious money. It's absolutely crazy. What, they're $2 million a car, these things, somewhere in that neck of the woods. And but yeah, in essence, it's a great place to do business. It really is, because it's got that old mentality, the souk, the marketplace mentality, where I'll give you a story. I used to do some business there, and I was doing a deal with somebody, and I had to send them 600 grand, right? And I'm like, send me the bank details, I'll get the money. He said, no, just come meet me in the souk for tea, and bring the cash. I was, cash? I said, what are you talking about? So yeah, call your bank. I said, there's no way I'm going to be able to do it. I called the bank and I said, yeah, come over in 5 minutes, sir. We'll have your cash. I'm like, I can't believe what's going on. And I literally went and met this guy in a crazy, like, a souk is like one of their markets, right? And he had this little shop above this like gold store, and went in there and, gave him the 600 grand and bought the products, which got sent to a warehouse and whatever. But real old school business, but the whole culture is built around doing deals and, money flowing. And but in essence, the tax side of it, the Emiratis, they do not need to work. The actual Emiratis, people from there, the retirement age for those guys, I think, is 34. So go figure. It
must be a Dubai thing, because you can't pull out more than like $10,000.
Oh my God.
being flagged here. Yeah.
You can't. That's what I mean. It's crazy. It really is. It's old school. I mean, I remember having to sign with the same guy that I opened an account with. Right? He knew me. I opened the account with him. He took my signature on file. It was in his drawer. I went back in to sign for a check. 15 times in front of him, I had to sign for this check. He said, no, it's incorrect. It doesn't match. I said, well, you saw me. I opened the account with you. You know I signed it. It's different every time. It's so prehistoric in so many ways, but so advanced in others. It's an amazing place, though. It really is. Has anybody ever been there?
No. I actually might be going here in the next few weeks. My brother-in-law does a lot of business over there, and him and my sister, they're going for a month. So they're like, come on over. We'll see. But to me, I think you guys highlighted a really unique example, because to me, like, taxes are kind of like a benefactor of what you're spending on as a nation. And I feel like as the US, like, we're kind of branded as like the world's police, right? I mean, our national defense budget is $850 billion a year. Like, I can't speak directly to what, Dubai or the United Emirates is, military budget is, but if they don't have one and they're not spending 850 on defense, and that doesn't kind of include Social Security and all of the other expenses that we have, that to me is like a kind of a direct, common denominator between, what you need the tax for and what you don't need the tax for. And some other nations are in a better place where they don't need to, they don't need as much money because they're not, in this position of needing to do X, Y, and Z with it. Now, I think, everybody would probably agree that the government overspends on certain things, whether it is defense. I know that a lot of people have had a lot of opinions on, a lot of the DEI stuff earlier in the year with, Elon and Trump going after, yada, yada, situations that, were kind of bogus that they, provided a ton of funding for. But like, how can the government just be efficient? How can we not like every year, if we're just adding, we're overspending and we're not paying down our debt? Everybody's been saying it for decades now, like we're headed towards a bad place, right? And how do you just get that spending under control? I love living in the US because I feel, tremendously safe, most of the time, stay out of the wrong spots. But, I think that our greatest dividers are the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. We don't really have to worry too much about Canada, considering they don't have an army. Mexico either, right? We're pretty well pretty well isolated, but we fight a lot of fights for other people. And I think that's what like Trump is trying to do, is trying to put the American people first. That's why I love not working in government, because a lot of these,
again, not to harp on Trump, but I did see that he awarded his son a military contract. Yeah, did you see that part? So
Well, we could jump into that subject, but we're going to be talking about Biden and Barack Obama.
Well, yeah, no, hey, everybody's entitled to it, and I believe all politicians, for the most part, well, they all print money, don't they? So no one's immune to that, and they're all after votes. So you got to take them all with a pinch of salt.
Well, and we touched on this.
No, I was going to say, yeah, you're right. I could bring 10 stories about Biden's sons and their business deals, but that's what I mean. I think the country needs some stability at the top with accountability. It doesn't matter whether it's red or blue; they all seem to be up to it. And there's enough where there's smoke, there's fire. That's what needs to happen to get this country back to start with fundamentally.
And I don't want to get too political either, and then Kyle, I'll let you jump in. But like, I love our system, but also what makes it really tough is like, and all of these presidents have a 4-year run, right? Some of them have 8-year runs, but like you have a finite amount of time to get something done. It could be the best idea ever, but like 4 years is not a lot of time to make some drastic change for the US. And then the next, Democratic president gets elected next, and they could just wipe out the entire thing, right? So like, I feel like we've seen that time and time again of, even like the wall that was built. A lot of people had a lot of different, thoughts on that. Trump got some of it done. Biden didn't believe in it. They had all those materials and they sold them for 2 cents on the dollar, right? And then Trump has to come in and then reinvest all that money to try and get it done. So like it's like tough to see, because you can make progress.
Yeah,
some people believe in it, some people don't, and then the timeline switches, and then their whole agenda is to switch whatever the other party's agenda was, right? And like, I feel like we're all old enough to see that happen time and time again, where things just kind of flip-flop rather than being, somewhat united in a certain direction to actually get things done. But it's just like, as an American, it's just like brutal to watch because it's hard to make real progress when.
Well, that's why I think it's dangerous when you see a headline of Trump's going to abolish or get rid of the IRS. Most people will not dive any deeper. So a lot of the people that don't do the research, they see a headline like that, I'm going to vote for this guy's going to get rid of the IRS. I don't even know what it means. You know what I'm saying? That's the danger of all this stuff. I think there needs to be a little bit more clarity around half of this stuff, and we don't know the full ins and outs.
We're doing a podcast on it, and it's still a hard subject to cover because it's so out there. It's it's like, what are the real ramifications? What does this actually mean for people? I mean, I remember when the tariff stuff was going into effect, like his goal was to have that basically offset the people's taxes that were making under $150,000 a year. So those people didn't pay taxes, right? It seems like it's evolved into, something else, but.
Well, there's some good stuff on there. Like, look at this. Here's a couple of the deductions, and I think these are for the people. So, new deduction, no tax on tips. Being British, we don't live on tips. When I first moved to the States and I bartended, I did a little, service work for a period, and it was crazy. I was amazed how much people relied on their tips and how good it was, right? So when that started changing, and again, that was, I think, a real blow to a lot of people because there's so many people rely on tips in the States. So that's a good thing off the bat, in my opinion. No tax on overtime. Like, these are the type of things that I want to see in a tax bill for the everyday American, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we should jump into that more. And it sounds like, Andrew, from what you're talking about on the BRICS nations, they know, because you're talking about China and all those other countries, they know that we only have 4-year terms.
Correct.
They 100%. Know, so they're just going to wait it out.
100%.
Trump's out. Once Trump's out, let's go in and hammer on the U.S. again. So they can put all that stuff, reverse everything that he's doing right now. But with that being said, and Gio just started jumping into it, let's kind of take it more out of Washington and move it back over to Main Street on what that's going to mean. What does that look like for the average American? Small business owners, even developers like myself, we're still small business owners. So what does that look like though? And Gio was just jumping into it. He wants to see, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. But what else can you do? What are there options out there?
You mean like what other options are there for the small businesses and things like that? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, you want to put more money in the everyday person's pocket. You're looking to try to, like, these people, a lot of people are struggling right now. Like inflation, we could have a whole conversation about inflation, but it is not, 3 or 4%.
Yeah. So here's the question I would be interested. So some of these things, some of the other deductions, there's the interest on car loans. Okay. These things. Now I'd be interested to know, can a W-2, is that open for a W-2 employee, or is that just if you're 1099, these deductions? That's something maybe we can dig into right now live
from a car standpoint. My understanding too on that is they're trying to prioritize American made things. Right. So you can take it, you can take that $10,000 deduction or whatever the specific number is, if it's like, made in America, made and produced in America. I believe that was the verbiage I was looking at. Kylie's big into crypto. I own a lot of crypto as well, not nearly as much as him, but I still think it's a decent number. Cryptos in the US, they're trying to get something passed that, like, US based cryptos, no capital gains tax on that kind of stuff. So they're trying to prioritize the US based stuff to reward US based, companies.
What's funny about that is, like, all of these politicians, like, their policies may be different, but everybody says that the US, like, they love to say that we have a spending problem, but behind closed doors, they're all scrambling just to figure out a way to outrun the budget that we have and not really
fund their initiative.
Right.
Whatever they're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just crazy to me. But, going back to, like, what other things I think should be available to, like, speaking of W-2 employees, I think a W-2 employee should be able to write off their mileage to go to work every day. I mean, there's people that have, like, hour-long commutes. They spend 2 hours behind the wheel, putting, some people like 50, 60 miles a day on their car just to get to work.
But think about the ones
wear and
think
tear.
about the ones that stay at home too, though. They should be able to write off if you're a W-2, because 1099 you can write off part of your home.
Yeah.
And there's many other things you write off on top of that, but that's just one example. And I utilize stuff like that currently, but that's as an owner.
Yeah, I mean, Kylie, to go back to your question, I kind of said it before, but like based on what I've read about this new system, I do, and I just feel bad because it does feel like the losers are people who are living paycheck to paycheck. Like those people do need to be prioritized, because it's it's the vast majority of the country, right? So how can you make them feel a little bit more stable, throwing the cost back on the end consumer? Is there a better route? I mean, I just read it was around 20 to 30%. That's that's a big number. You spend $300 on groceries and that new number is $400. It's a big number, right? So like how can you create a situation where they're going to be winning? Because if the people that are making more money, they get to save more, those costs don't affect them as much. They can save it, they can invest it, and as I said before, people that own assets end up winning in the long run, right? And that's what America's all about. It's about owning equity and being able to make a difference. And if you're only like allowing that for a certain amount of people, like, and as Kyle said before, if people really got to get smart with what they're doing, because although $500 doesn't seem like a lot of money, if you're plugging away and you're buying the right things and you're investing it the right way, in a year's time, it's going to make a difference, right? And to me, from like a psychological standpoint, you're going to think about things differently. You're going to make different decisions. It's going to help you grow, but you got to be on the offense about that to make it actually happen.
Yeah, right now I think one of the biggest wealth transfers of all time is about to happen. So if you're not positioning yourself right, you need to start doing that right now, especially if all this goes, the way Trump is planning it to go. You need to not focus so much on risk, just more of a strategy. It's really like, how do the smart people position themselves? I know a lot of people are moving to cash. I do still believe there are some excellent opportunities over the next few months that are going to go through the roof in the crypto market. And, some of the I'm not going to say gold's going to go up right now, but I do believe silver is going to shoot through the roof in the next year. But there's some things that they could do and take that extra money and put it into things that are make them get out of that lower middle class and help them, gain some kind of wealth.
The worry with this, what you mentioned something earlier, Andrew, about you get one party in for 4 years, one 4-year term. There's not the other one reverses it. Same thing with this new tax bill, right? What happens in 4 years, right? Or when the next people come in, do they start? Because obviously it's going to put so much strain on the national debt. Then the next party got to raise taxes because of that to keep up with it. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can happen, but it's kind of like it's just swinging the pendulum one way to the other, isn't it? It seems to be.
Yeah, I mean, and I just think that like Americans don't have a consistency with. There's so much news all of the time, and new leadership takes office, new administration comes in. A lot of people, kind of as we're speaking about, and I hope that this podcast can be helpful for people, but like a lot of people don't do their homework and see how it affects them, how they can benefit from it, etc. But
So here's the question. Then I think we can all agree that you can't change the game, can we? Right? We cannot change the game. That's not going to happen. It is what it is. So what can we do, Carl? Because you kind of touched upon it there, in terms of position ourselves. Give us some type of, and again, obviously telling everybody what they should do. Just some practical example of what possibly we could do to position ourselves to take advantage of the biggest shift of wealth you're talking about, and maybe dive into that.
What more into what steps they could take now with their financials?
Yeah, or you said the biggest shift of wealth. What is it you see as the biggest shift of wealth? I've got my own idea on that.
Well, the biggest shift in wealth, everything's going digital. So with that being stated, you're going to see certain assets, especially in the digital industry. There's some that are outside as well. Obviously, AI is going to be huge, and there's a transition of wealth that's going to happen. It doesn't mean that some of the wealthy people aren't going to get wealthier, but I think you're going to have trillionaires very shortly. I do believe people like Michael Saylor and some of those other guys are going to become trillionaires. But you got to, put yourself in the right assets. So I think what you did the other day, which you sent me some pictures of some of the things you invested in, I love that. But you took action right away. Most people, they'll sit there and think about what they want to do. So putting yourself in the position, and maybe everybody doesn't know what that is. I think we had a podcast where we went over a little more in depth on like the crypto side. I'm big into crypto. I know where certain ones are headed, but that's because I research them and what they're going to do for our economy. But people need to start researching. You got to take a little bit of time out of your day. Like I don't have much time in my day, but I'll spend, an hour. Like I get up at 4 a.m. I'll come here after I work out usually and spend an hour just trying to research as much as I can on all my investments. And then I'll start my, work for business. So I've already spent 2 or 3 hours by the time 6 o'clock comes around, doing my workout. I probably usually don't eat, but I'll come in and study everything I possibly can on investments, which I have my own little laptop on all this now. So it's all, on here. But I spend at least an hour a day doing that. And that it's not usually even just 5 days a week. On the weekend, I'll be doing that as well. I'll go to the motocross track or, go play some golf. And I'm still researching stuff like that. So just taking that little bit extra time. It doesn't have to be a lot, but spend that extra time and dedicate it every day to putting yourself in a better position. Because the way I invest, not saying it's not the way you want to invest, but I'm a higher risk person. I'm okay with that because of where I'm at in life. I, have enough money where I could retire at this point. And not everybody's in that position, but I wasn't there not that long ago. It was a very short amount of time ago. I was in a totally different position. We're happy to jump in on a different podcast and go over, what those.
I need your native coins. I need the native coins. I need the big.
Well, you're always gonna have your base ones,
100 bangers, 1,000 bangers, whatever they call them.
There are going to be some of those coming, and I think I told you guys I invested in quite a few of those, and I will continue to because. And for me, it's small amounts, but it's thrown in between 3 to 20,000 in these small tokens. If they go to zero, whatever, and I've had that happen before. But when you have one of them that goes from 3,000 to 420,000, that changes your life. For most people. Yeah, and I've had numerous ones do. I shouldn't say numerous. I've had a couple do that amount.
Right, I like it.
Yeah,
I'm all ears.
Send those in the chat, Kylie. I'm here to ride the wave with you, buddy.
Well, and guys, it's not just me. Like I don't have all the time to sit there and study all of the whole crypto market. I'm part of 2 different programs, and I'm not going to mention them. I'm not here to brag on them. We chat about that off air, but I'm part of different programs that they do a lot of studies. They do a lot of the research, and then I put the research in after that because you always want to make sure, like when you're looking at even a crypto project or even a business, same thing. Who's the CEO? What's his background look like? Who's the team? Who's all on the team? What kind of products do they have? You want to research all that stuff and make sure that it's a good quality investment. Like everybody pretty much knows what gold and silver is. Those are probably not going to fly to the roof. I do believe silver is going to have a high use case coming up. So I do think it's going to shoot pretty good. But, gold is God's money. And, you guys know me. I put God first on everything. So every investment I do, I always pray on it as well. But there are some investments coming up you guys are going to see shoot through the roof. Like you're going to 100x, 1000x coming up very shortly.
I mean, I think that's the draw with crypto, right? It can the velocity in a short space of time. Like gold and silver over the long term, pretty simple to understand what happens when it goes up. It just doesn't go up in 3 months, 6 months, massively. Can do, but not to a crypto. But over 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, actually over the last 20 years, gold's outperformed the S&P 500 2 to 1. So most people don't know that because it looks quite boring, but that's not the same as one of your $3,000 investments going to 480. You see what I mean? You're not going to get it. But same thing, you probably wouldn't put the same amount of money into gold as you would as something like that, or vice versa, right? So you've got to manage that risk to the individual. But yeah, I'm excited about that. I there's a story that somebody, I kicking myself now. I had an investment firm, like an alternative investment firm in Europe. And every week we'd get somebody coming in offering us a product to sell to the market, whether it would be, a loan note for a developer or student housing or whatever it was. But you would see everything, from good investments to God knows what. And got one guy came in, started talking about this digital, coin, crypto, basically Bitcoin it was. And I laughed him out of the office. I said, come on, buddy, like this is ridiculous. And his last ditch was like, look, take 10 grand, just bite yourself. And my God, if I'd have done that now, I wouldn't be on this podcast. I'd be practicing my putting stroke.
I hate saying that too, man.
Yeah, it is what it is. So yeah. I just couldn't get my head around crypto. I couldn't. I was so old fashioned in that sense, like, you know, physically real.
What I just stated to you is why I lost out on Bitcoin, because I wouldn't take the time. I was so busy with business. You know, running business it's beyond full-time jobs. I, you know, have numerous businesses, but I wouldn't take the little bit of time that it took to research the Bitcoin. So I don't let any opportunity like that pass me anymore. I'll take a little bit of time, figure out what its use case is, and at least who is backing it and who's, you know, building that company out. So it's well worth taking the time. But
For sure. Well, we're in a different space. Once it's on Wall Street, you know it's real and legit. Well, I shouldn't say that. Take that with a pinch of salt, that comment, but you get my point, right? It's here to stay at the very least.
yeah, we're gonna wrap it up, guys. But I'm gonna give you guys 30 seconds, pretty much. I guess give me your final thoughts. So, what's the biggest mistake or biggest opportunity you guys see with this tax shift, if it ever occurs? Let's say where Trump gets it, where it removes with tariffs all of our debt, $5 trillion that we currently have.
Yeah, never happened. It's my thought. Never
I can
happened.
jump in. I think, like, at a high level, a lot of this podcast sort of represents change and how to, like, put yourself within the change. And as Kyle was alluding to, doing your research. So, like, everybody has a different situation. Change represents opportunity. So, you know, if you can, like, find out what your situation is, do your homework, do your research, and, like, properly place yourself within that change, whether it's, you know, you're going to be getting basically zero tax. Okay, you understand that. How can you draw your, you know, expenses down so you're not spending, so you're not, you know, basically giving the tax back? And then how can you collect that money to then, you know, put yourself in a different trajectory, invest properly, and kind of move the needle, right? I'm encouraged by it. I think that there's a lot of kind of moving parts here, and we're going to see how it all goes. But you know, with change brings opportunity. So, you know, everybody should do their homework and kind of make it work for them in whatever situation they're in.
Well, I think like just my main focus in this whole storm is, you know, how can the middle class just get a leg up? And I feel like they're one of the most underserved. Well, it's you know, not one of, like, they are the most underserved groups of people when it comes to tax code. And, you know, they've got their heads down at work all day. Meanwhile, there's policy changes every 4 years. And, you know, by the time they look over their shoulder to look forward to something, it changes. So I think, you know, a short Band-Aid would be to, you know, maybe use that tariff money to open up some of those opportunities, some of those tax cutting opportunities to W-2 employees, like, you know, like remote work expense deductions, like commuting and mileage credits, tool and equipment write-offs, like, you know, just your bills that you use for business. I think, you know, although that 300 billion we've collected in tariffs doesn't make up for the 5.2 to 7.5 trillion we collect in income taxes, but it can certainly make up for you know, the W-2 class to be able to write off a lot more of the expenses that they're exposed to, that people like me and a lot of other businesses just simply even don't have to worry about.
Yeah, I would wrap it up by, my advice to anybody would be, go and get hold of your CPA, set up a meeting, and lean on them. They're the professionals. They know more than we do, right? And that's what you pay them for. Go and ask them to give you their breakdown of this bill, what they know your taxes and your situation, and ask them how you can take advantage of it, and then go out and do your own research on top of that. So that's what I would say. So get educated on it. If not, that's on, you know, that's on you if you don't get educated on it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, guys. Always want to give a shout out to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, Yeshua. So thank you for letting us have a great, beautiful day here in Missouri as well. So it's been a little chilly, but thank you, Lord, for everything. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Have a blessed day.